Russia warns US that Ukraine will be its second Vietnam.
Here's a summary of the article.
The Kremlin's spy chief Sergei Naryshkin warned the US that Ukraine will turn into its second Vietnam, amid disagreement in Congress over funding for Kyiv. Ultimately, the US risks creating a second Vietnam for itself, and every new American administration will have to deal with it, he added. The warning comes after US President Joe Biden on Wednesday urged Congress to further support Ukraine with funding. Biden is trying to push through a $61.4 billion emergency funding request for Kyiv, but opposition against further aid to Ukraine has grown among Republicans in the House of Representatives. The U.S. was engaged in the Vietnam War, fought between South Vietnam and the U.S. on one side and Communist North Vietnam backed by the Soviet Union and China on the other, for nearly 2 decades. The conflict claimed more than 1 million lives, including tens of thousands from the U.S., and ended with a comprehensive victory for the North Vietnamese forces. According to a recent poll, 59% of Americans still support sending military aid to Ukraine.
This post received a score of 7,100, with an upvote ratio of 92%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Why? They're not on ground and likely won't be. Maybe Russia's second Afghanistan, perhaps.
Russia wishes it were. It is much worse.
Yeah, 10 years 15k dead vs 2 years and 400k plus dead. Yeah, this is much worse. Edit. Current death count is believed to be 336k with a 15% margin of error either way. The total wounded is over 1 million with 30 to 40% margin for error, as wounded are much harder to track in the short run.
There isn't 400k dead though. Maybe 400k casualties, with about a third of those Kia.
The birth rate in Russia is going to decline massively, assuming those men hadn't already reproduced. Russia will be counting the cost for a long time.
They were already facing demographic collapse. This just accelerates it.
Russia has no centenarians? To be fair, I wouldn't want to spend 100 years living in Russia either.
Ironic, since it is already Russia's second Afghanistan.
Russia lost 15,000 men in Afghanistan in 10 years. They're losing that many in Ukraine about every 2 weeks.
Not even Russia. The whole USSR fought in Afghanistan.
There was not nearly this much retaliation from the Afghans.
Russia is confused, as Ukraine is already Russia's second Afghanistan.
Or their first Vietnam.
This is way worse than Vietnam for them in the number of soldiers lost.
Russia is just playing to nut jobs in America who think the US is spending huge amounts of money in Ukraine. Russia has just had to increase its spending on defense to 30% of its annual budget. The US has spent 4% of its defense budget. The UK has spent 2 weeks funding for the National Health Service. In short, Russia's is losing men and treasure at a rate it can't sustain. Ukraine's backers are spending the equivalent of change found the back of the sofa.
It is funny that littoral island nations are richer than Russia, a resource haven. How does Russia manage to get dealt such bad leaders?
At this point, tradition.
It's always been tradition, and any outliers are scorned for being weak.
The Kremlin spy chief Sergei Naryshkin warned the U.S. that Ukraine will turn into its second Vietnam. Amid disagreement in Congress over funding for Kyiv, Ukraine will turn into a black hole, absorbing more and more resources and people. Russian Foreign Intelligence Chief Naryshkin said Thursday in a written statement published by his agency's House journal, The Intelligence Operative. Trying to put the blame on others while continuing to commit internationally condemned war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is what Russia has become, a dictatorial shithole the size of Nazi Germany.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.